one cheap bone-in cut of beef, 2 onions, about $3 on the counter, all told, and by the time the day is done, that little pile turns into more than 20 hot dinners that will keep for 2 years with no fridge and no freezer touching them. Do the sum slow, because it does not look right the first time. $3, 20 suppers, 2 years on a shelf. That is not a trick, and it is not a story. That is arithmetic, the kind a hungry family learned to do in 1932 when there wasn't a second dollar to spare and the cold months were coming on hard, and I am going to hand you the whole of it today. I'm Wendell. I've been putting food by since before most folks watching had their first kitchen. 50 years of canning, drying, and keeping food without a wire running to it. There's a year of dinners on my cellar shelf right now with not 1 watt of power touching them. I'm not a chef and I never claimed to be. I'm just an old hand who's filled a lot of jars and made a lot of mistakes so you don't have to. This is exactly how families got through the worst of the Great Depression. The shelves were bare, the icebox was a luxury most porches never saw, and a single soup bone had to stretch across a week and feed every mouth at the table. So they didn't waste it. They cooked it down hard, into something small and dense and rich, and they put it up to outlast the winter. The grocery chain would just as soon you forgot how to do that. They do better business every single week you need them. A full cellar is the one thing on God's earth they cannot sell you, so stay with me, partner. By the end you'll know the whole method, what it really costs. About $3. And the one step that turns a jar of this from supper into poison sitting on your shelf. Get that part wrong and it's botulism, and botulism doesn't smell like anything, doesn't taste like anything, doesn't warn you at all. So watch it clear through to the end. This part is a matter of life and death, and I mean that plain. And I'll be straight with you the way an old hand ought to be. Before we go one step further, a word of caution, because it matters more than the recipe. Putting up meat and low-acid food the wrong way makes a poison you cannot see, smell, or taste. So I do it the tested way, a pressure canner, the USDA times, clean jars. Follow the current chart, not just a video, and when in doubt, throw it out. No jar of soup is worth a hospital bed. Now, let me tell you what most folks get wrong, because it's the whole game. Here's what most folks get wrong. They think the modern version they've seen, the one with a blender and a freezer tray, is the old way. It is not. I want to show you both, honest, side by side, and tell you which one a 1930s family actually used, because they matter different. Let me back up to where I learned it. My grandmother Hattie fed a big family clear through the Depression out of 1 pot a week. 1 pot. She'd take whatever cheap cut she could get. A shin, a neck, a knuckle of bone with a little meat clinging on, and she'd set it to simmer at first light, low and slow, with onions and whatever roots the cellar still had. By evening that pot had given up everything it had, and then she did the part that mattered. She didn't serve it all and start over. She kept the richest of it back, cooked it down further still, and set it by, so that one good pot fed them long past the day it was made. She used to say it plain, waste nothing. I can still hear her. Now think about the difference between the way the store trains you and the way Hattie lived. The modern kitchen is built to send you back to the store every few days. A meal bought 3 times a day, every day, forever. The old kitchen was built to set you free of the store for a season. Town folks bought supper. Hattie put up a winter of suppers once, and then she forgot the store had a door. That is the whole difference, and it's worth more now than it ever was. So here is what you're buying, and what it costs. 1 bone-in beef cut, a shin or a chuck with the bone left in. That's about $3 to $4 at the meat counter, and the bone is the secret, not the waste. 2 yellow onions, maybe 40 cents. A couple of carrots and a stick of celery if you've got them, a few pennies each. Salt, a little pepper, that's it. Under $3 of food becomes the base for more than 20 bowls of hot, real soup. $3, 20 suppers. Now let me show you how to get there. You start it slow. Brown that bone-in cut hard in the bottom of a heavy pot, cast iron if you have it, until it's deep and dark on every side. That browning is flavor, and flavor is the whole point of cooking it down. Then in go the onions, the roots, cold water to cover by a good 2 inches, and you bring it up gentle and let it go. Hours, not minutes. 3-4 hours at a bare simmer, the bone gives up its gelatin. That's the stuff that makes good broth go thick and silky when it cools, and it's real nutrition, plain protein and gelatin. Nothing magic, I won't sell you magic. When the meat slides off that bone with a fork, you're there. Then you cook it down. This is the heart of it. You pull the bones out, you keep the meat, and you let that pot reduce. Keep simmering, slow, until what was a big pot of thin soup becomes a small pot of thick, dark, concentrated richness. You're driving the water off. What's left is intense. A spoonful of it, loosened with a mug of hot water, becomes a full bowl of soup. That concentration is the trick the whole thing rests on. The Depression families called it different things. Pocket soup, portable soup, a soup cake. But it's the same old idea. Make it small, make it keep. Now hold on. Here is where the 2 roads split, and I want you to see both clear, because one of them is a modern convenience dressed up as history, and the other is the real thing. The first road is the one you've seen on every cooking channel. You take that thick concentrate, you blend it smooth with a blender, you pour it into a tray, and you freeze it into cubes. And I'll be honest with you. That works, and it's handy, and the cubes are lovely. But hear me, that is a modern way. A blender and a freezer are modern conveniences, plain and simple. Hattie never owned either one. In 1930 there was no electric blender on the counter and no freezer humming in the corner, so let nobody tell you a frozen cube is how they did it in the Depression. It isn't. It's a fine thing for today if your power stays on, but a freezer is only a fine thing until the power's out for a week. And then it's a coffin full of spoiled meat, and your 2-year supper is gone in 3 warm days. A frozen cube keeps for a few months in the freezer and not 1 minute past the blackout. So if all you want is a handy weeknight shortcut, and you trust your lights, blend and freeze. But that is not putting food by. That is just cooking ahead. The second road is the real one, the one that actually keeps for 2 years on a shelf with no power at all. And it's the reason this recipe survived the Depression in the first place. There are 2 honest ways to get there. The first shelf-stable way is to dry it. You take that thick concentrate and you spread it thin as you can, onto a lined dehydrator tray, and you dry it low and slow until it goes from a paste to a hard, brittle sheet like dark glass, with no moisture left in it at all. No water, no spoiling. That's the whole law of it. Microbes cannot grow in something truly dry. You break that sheet into shards, or you grind it to a powder, and you store it in a clean jar in a cool, dark cupboard. That dried concentrate, kept properly dry and cool, genuinely keeps a year or 2 and longer. That's real. That's the homemade bouillon the old folks carried, and a teaspoon in a mug of hot water is a cup of soup. The Frontier Trail cooks carried a dried version of exactly this. A hard cake of cooked down stock, no icebox in 1,000 miles, good for the whole drive. That's the chuck wagon way, and it's honest. The second shelf-stable way if you want it wet and ready in the jar, is to pressure can it. And now we are at the step you cannot skip, the one I warned you about. Soup with meat and vegetables in it is a low-acid food, and low-acid food is exactly where botulism grows, so it does not go in a boiling water bath. It does not get sealed hot on the counter. It does not go in the oven. Those are the ways folks make poison without knowing it. Low-acid food, meat, vegetables. A mixed soup like this goes in a pressure canner, and only a pressure canner, because only the pressure canner gets hot enough, around 240 degrees, to kill what a boiling pot cannot. You fill clean jars, leave the head space the chart tells you, and you process them at 10 or 11 pounds of pressure for the time the USDA chart gives for your food, your jar size, and your altitude. And that's an hour and a quarter or more for pints, longer for quarts. Don't take my number for gospel. Pull up the current USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, or the Ball Blue Book, or the National Center for Home Food Preservation. That's nchfp.uga.edu, and follow today's chart, not a man on a video. Now I have to tell you something I got wrong for years, because an honest man owns his mistakes. For the longest time I believed what a lot of folks still believe, that if you got the jar good and hot, and it sealed with a nice pop, it was safe, and that a good dose of salt would see to the rest. That is wrong, and it's dangerous wrong. Vinegar does not stop botulism in a low-acid food. Salt does not stop botulism. Sealing it hot does not stop botulism. Acid only protects you when the whole food is sour clear through. True pickles, real jam, properly acidified tomatoes, and a meat soup is not that. I canned by the old wrong way longer than I'd like to admit, and the good Lord watched over me, because I didn't know what I didn't know. Don't you do it, pressure canner or the dried shard. Those are your two honest roads to 2 years. And here's the hard truth about the danger, so you carry it with you. Botulinum toxin has no smell and no taste. A bad jar can look and smell perfectly fine and still kill you. So you never judge a jar by your nose. If a lid is bulging, if it's leaking, if it spurts when you crack it, if the color's off or it foams, that jar goes in the trash, and you do not taste it to check. When in doubt, throw it out. I mean a spoiled jar, now, not the good ones. A properly dried or properly canned batch keeps its 2 years honest, and you eat it with confidence. The throw it out is for the one jar that went wrong, never an excuse to doubt a good batch. Let me stop here a moment, because I'm honestly curious. Has your family ever put food up for a hard winter? A cellar? A smokehouse? A grandmother who canned? Tell me down in the comments. I read them, and those old family ways are half of why I started doing this. So let's talk plain about what one of these gives you, because I won't dress it up. A spoonful of that concentrate, or a teaspoon of the dried, in a mug of hot water, is a real cup of soup. Warm, filling, with honest protein and gelatin from the bone and whatever you put in alongside it. It is not a vitamin, it is not a cure, it doesn't fix your joints or detox a thing, and any fellow who tells you different is selling something. It's food, good, cheap, keeping food. In a hard week that is worth more than any pill on a shelf, run the cost against the other way one more time, because this is where it lands. $3 of cheap bone-in cut and a couple of onions, cooked down and put up right, gives you better than 20 hot bowls that wait 2 years on your shelf and don't care if the power's on. The supermarket way is a freezer full of meat you'll lose the first long blackout, and a cart of cans you paid 4 times over for. $3, 20 suppers, 2 years. That's the arithmetic Hattie did at her stove, and it still comes out the same. A quick word for the folks who like the dried shard best, and where are you watching from, by the way? I do like knowing how far these old recipes travel. If you go the dried road, keep it bone dry. Any moisture at all and it can clump and turn, so a tight jar in a cool, dark cupboard, and if it ever feels soft or sticky instead of glass hard, it pulled damp, dry it again or let it go. Next time, I'll show you what my grandmother did with a hog and a sack of salt that fed a family clear through to spring. No jar, no fire, no power at all, just salt and patience and a cool cellar. It's the natural next step after today, and it's older than any canner. Until next time. Keep your shelves full, keep your fire low and slow, and remember, the folks who fed a family through the Depression with $2 and no icebox knew things were only just starting to need again.